Hello and welcome to CX Today. My name is Charlie and today I'm joined by 6 excellent customer experience analysts to run through all the latest big news from last week's Dreamforce 2024 event. Yes, today I'm delighted to be joined by Zeus Kerravala, the Principal Analyst at ZK Research, Liz Miller, VP and Principal Analyst at Constellation Research, Rebecca Wettemann, CEO and Principal Analyst at Valoir, Michael Fauscette, Founder, CEO and Chief Analyst at Arion Research, and joining us today for the first time, Pratik, a Senior Analyst at Everest Group. And it's great to have you all join me, and let's get right into the news. And there's only one real place to start, I think, and that's with the formal announcement of Agentforce. And Agentforce offers a network of autonomous AI agents for service, sales, marketing, and commerce teams, which Salesforce customers can scope and implement across the Salesforce platform. Salesforce has made a lot of big claims about how this could change customer experience operations, and it'll be great to hear all of your thoughts on how it'll exactly do that. And Rebecca, maybe I can start with you on this one.
Well, I think it's great to see Dreamforce not just announcing Agentforce, but having capabilities where customers are actually able to get up and running at the event, being able to build out their own agents, really helping to bridge that gap between what we've seen in the AI space, which is balancing FOMO and FOMO, the fear of messing up, right? And what Salesforce has done with Agentforce and with a broader trust layer and Data Cloud has put a lot of guardrails around here, recognizing that, a year and a half we were talking about model builder. Lo and behold, people don't want to build and maintain models. They want a lot more safety built into this for them. And I think the fact that they're releasing functionality today that enables customers to do that and that they were able to actually stand it up at Dreamforce is a pretty significant achievement.
Yeah, I think the big trend here is moving from generation to action. And I think that's really important is obviously the, virtual agents that tell you things, that's useful, but virtual agents that do things, that's considerably more useful. And they've done some interesting things underneath that. And I think this also points to how quickly they brought this out, goes back to how well they transitioned to Data Cloud and how much the data foundation is really, improving every release and giving them the capability to do some of these unique things. And then Rebecca, you mentioned model builder. It's interesting that one of the big trends has been specialty models, and they announced a couple of really big specialty models underneath Agentforce that I think are going to make a big difference. And one of them moving from language model to, large action models instead of just generation tools. So I think I think those are interesting, and particularly the specialty model around Sales Cloud.
Yeah, what I like about this too is it's really, you're right, you can read what it is really more a platform approach to it. I think, Rebecca, when you started, lo and behold, customers do want to build they've had a lot of AI capabilities. I think if you look at the success they've had with Einstein over the decade, it's been fair, I guess, right? Like some customers had some success, some didn't, but it was very much a bunch of AI kind of Lego blocks and you put it together yourself. I think in this case, they've taken a much more holistic approach to it where, when you look at the 5 attributes, right? The role, the data, the actions, the guardrails, the channel, right? It's everything you need to run AI in the Salesforce cloud. And I think, it's probably just part of this is just the maturity of the industry. I think if you think back to when Einstein was released a decade ago, it was really only the early adopters that would even try it. I think your FOMO comment is appropriate, but now that it's, certainly reached more mass market interest, I'm not going to say adoption, but you do need a more turnkey way of doing it, and I think that's that's part of this. One of the things I'm curious to see how they address though is one of the reasons Einstein didn't work all that well with some customers is the data in Salesforce, as isn't great, and that's not anything to do with Salesforce. Is just when you look at, I remember talking to one of the, a sales manager about this, the salespeople, he couldn't get them to put more than 4 words in Salesforce.
Trying to say CRM isn't awesome, Zeus? What?
Yeah. So this is where AI actually could make AI better if you could just automate the input of the data, right? And not have to rely on people at all. So I didn't really see how that was addressed in this, but I do think they're, the platform approach, more turnkey is better here.
And I think that's where Data Cloud comes in, right? Data Cloud becomes the big answer to that. I think that this Dreamforce was the culmination of the last three. And I think the last three were kind of the unsexy, we're building the machines that make the sausage kind of motions, right? You were really getting all of your, you were getting your data in one place with Data Cloud. The fact that it is really a customer data platform that's built on a data lake architecture. When we were saying those words out loud 2 years ago, 1 year ago, it felt like meaningless for a lot of people in businesses and for a lot of Salesforce admins, right?
Yep.
It was like, oh, great, you connect to Snowflake. I'm so glad I get to go and have that discussion with my CIO now. No one wanted to have it. But I think that for those Salesforce customers that went and did it, they got serious about Data Cloud. They pulled in all of their disparate data sources that come from outside of this kind of frontline CX posture, right? So you pulled in that data where you could, out of Snowflakes, out of Databricks, out of your ERP systems. When you pulled it all together, and you did that over the last 2 years, there was almost this sense of, okay, now what do I do with all this stuff? And so Agentforce coming in and really kind of elegantly being able to sit on top of that quite easily and extract all that goodness and actually use it and pull that into the models quite quickly has been a game changer for a lot of people when they're looking at tangible use cases of AI. But I think in fairness, all of us on this call, and those of us who have been watching CX for a while, we had a front row seat to see how these models and how this type of generative AI and this type of process would work, because this is AirKit, right? Like this is the AirKit acquisition. So I can remember all of us having this conversation. Zeus, I distinctly remember you having this conversation, right? Hey, AirKit has some really great tangible business use cases. They had a great conversational AI when it came to commerce that was actually bringing commerce and service into one pane so that you could have those conversational moments of transaction. And I think we were all really impressed with that it wasn't just an ML model spitting out the next best recommendation when we were really looking at what AirKit's AI and what that studio was able to do. And so I think what we've seen here is, unlike maybe some other larger, bigger other acquisitions in Salesforce's, history.
There's only one other that was larger. So,
I think that what we've seen here is a really smart integration and a really smart ordering of how all of these things have become available so that people understand, how do I get up and running with them today? It's not, I'd like to create a sonnet that sounds like Jay-Z, right? Like it's not that like weird fantasy generative AI use. It's literally, hey, how can I apply this in marketing? Oh, you have an easy to use model. I think that Mark Benioff's biggest message that we heard over and over and over again in two different ways, we'll explain, was don't do it yourself, right? Like the AI can't be a DIY model. For anyone who was at the pre-brief, we all heard him say, roll your own, but that's besides the point. Yeah. But we'll take that for the joke that it was intended to be. Yeah, we'll let that go when he was talking about everyone can light it up. But I think that there is an element of, you should be able to just kind of get up and go, because we've done the hard sausage making and we've done the hard work with you. Because I thought what was really interesting is it wasn't we've done it for you, right? A lot of this was we've done it with you. But I know Agentforce was the big announcement, like Agentforce, right? Like Agentforce is everywhere. Quite frankly, what I thought the bigger announcement could have been, and at least the important announcement, if Data Cloud was important last year, if all the other things, it's that all of the clouds are now built on foundation, on their core. They have been rewritten ground up. So now that you've got all this data, now that you've got this platform, now that you're leveraging public cloud, now that you have this AI trust layer, and now that you have Agentforce, all of this crumbles if you can't put all of your critical clouds, sales, marketing, service, commerce, Tableau, revenue cloud, your CPQ. If you don't have a way, if you had to bring in like 19 different consultants and 7 different integrators, and it didn't all speak in the same language, you'd have a real hard time making Agentforce truly be effective across your entire CX ecosystem. So the fact that it's now that we have this solution and we have this platform called Foundations, I think it goes back, both Zeus and I think everyone has said it, and Arion, I dare you to say it again, but I think this all comes back to we have a really solid foundation now, and that has been critical to using AI.
And so of all the data connectors they announced with Data Cloud,
Yep.
right?
Yeah,
You've
true.
got to be able to connect that data and do it in a cost-effective way.
Yep.
Absolutely, absolutely. And also, I mean, as Liz said, right, it all boils down to the data and the foundation layer. Everywhere you see from the last couple of quarters and last couple of years as well, we all track the Salesforce market and how their financials have been. It has been going down consistently, right? They have started from somewhere like 30% year on year, quarter on quarter growth to now what is like 8%, 9%. But I guess what Salesforce has really done in all this while is their investments and core investments on data, I would say. The whole, I mean, whatever offering that right now they're pushing, right? Agentforce, all the precursor agents from Genie to Einstein led to everything else, right? Everything had that data element to it. So data eventually, like even Mark had said this multiple times, they want to become a data company. It's not just your any pure play CRM firm anymore. So pretty excited about the Agentforce, and I actually went through a couple of their demos. It was really really interesting to see what they can actually do uh, from these agents. And I kind of not just limiting ourselves to the Salesforce conversation here. I kind of see a lot of other enterprise platforms. I know I'm just going off the topic here, but I do see other platforms like Oracle, likes of Oracle and Microsoft also, kind of following the same data specific path route. So yeah, handing it over to the team.
I mean, everybody's trying to become a data company, right? They have lots of
Yeah.
it, and some of it's good, some of it's bad. I think one of the, Liz, the point you brought up of putting everything on one cloud, actually, I mean, this has been a criticism of Salesforce for a long time, right? And so, I mean, we'll see if this works. I mean, there's still a lot of work to be done,
Yeah.
but everyone's talking the data. The data story now. So we'll see who can do it properly.
Well, and arguably the whole the whole acquisition approach to this has just fragmented everything. So putting this back together in a unified way really makes a big difference and starts to really drive a lot of value out of all those other acquisitions that now can function together because they have a base data layer. So.
One of the other things that I thought was really interesting that Mark brought up in the Q&A with analysts was, we've heard for a long time about how Salesforce's AI has to be correct and it has to be trusted and it's going to be right. And then he said, we're going to all go down and do this together with Agentforce, and it's either going to be great or it's going to go terribly wrong. Right? So everything he's been telling us about Salesforce being perfect from an AI perspective, he sort of put on its head. And I recognize that that's a data issue, but I think it was more him pointing out and making it clear to everybody that as easy as Agentforce looks, what Salesforce has done underneath is really hard.
Yeah.
Right? And they've been working on it a while. So understanding that you got to have the really hard stuff underneath done correctly for it to work at the top layer. I saw that as more of a jab against competitors than doubts that
you mean calling Clippy out wasn't enough? I mean, did we have to? Listen, do I have to be the one that defends Clippy all the dang time? His eyebrows are fabulous. He was absolutely wonderful. I don't like. He was way ahead of his time.
He was
like, we need leave Clippy the heck alone, Benioff. I'm telling you right now, I will defend Clippy. But I thought it was really interesting, though, and I think Rebecca, your point, so on point, was we're all still navigating where us as businesses and where us as consumers, right? In that dual world, where we are going to find the most value in AI agents as opposed to AI or AI adjacent co-pilots, right? I thought that was a big conversation that
Yeah.
Salesforce wanted to have, right?
Yeah.
And what I think is really interesting about that is there were a couple things that got brought up that I think for those of us in CX, it may have struck a nerve. Like, I audibly went, like on the keynote stage, kind of calling out that in a world of loose virtual assistants or, kind of poorly constructed journeys and, bots, we end up alienating our people. I mean, it was called out from the stage in the industry. We had someone delivering a demo actually say, "Did you know that in the market, this call is called call deflection? They want to deflect you from engaging with the company." And I was like, "Oh, dang. Okay, we're going there." Like, whoa, you wanted to open this can of worms? Oh, okay. And maybe I was the only one that felt that can of worms opening up. But I think it was an important conversation to start having, because in the kind of co-pilot, and I'm not focusing this on Microsoft in any way, shape, or form. I think everyone leaned into the
Broader term,
idea of a co-pilot, that broader term, right? Where we wanted someone who was just kind of sitting on our shoulder helping us, but were they helping us in the right direction? Were they helping us with business strategy, or were they helping us regurgitate the same things over and over and over again that weren't necessarily moving the needle? Were they telling us to put a colon there instead of putting an M dash, Clippy, right? So I get the analogy, and I get that kind of frustration of, it feels like we were doing the same thing over and over again. We were repackaging call deflection in a bot, and that's not what we really wanted to do in a scenario where we wanted to demonstrate empathy. So I think that the bigger conversation here is, are we having to do a bit of a culture and strategy shift now that we have new alternatives that bring data and model and process and automation together? Do we have to rethink, are we putting all of this technology back into the service of deflecting and operational cost savings, or are we actually looking to connect these agents together to really automate larger processes that our customers are saying we want to have in a self-service motion, and our employees and our companies are saying this probably should be in a self-service motion? How do we bring that peanut butter and chocolate together becomes, I think, the big question that I don't think that conversation was had as explicitly during Dreamforce, and I wish that I had heard more of it. But I'm also hoping that when they do all of these kind of city tours of bringing Agentforce and bringing this technology to the individual cities, we also have that strategy conversation. Because as great as Agentforce, as that excitement and that electricity in San Francisco was like palpable, I think that we're going to end up in the same spot again if we're just using that same mentality of, well, if we can get the people away, if we can automate the self-service through this agent, it will make them go away. That's not going to be a winning AI strategy for the entire organization. It might be the right thing in the contact center, but it's not going to be the right thing for a sales agent. It might not be the right thing for a marketing agent. And I think we have to have those strategic dialogues across the organization before we get too far down the road of automating.
Yeah. I mean, you bring up something interesting, though, Liz, around automation, right? There is a certain amount of, we don't know how to do this, and there's a bit of fear that, you automate things, that means there's no human in there, right? It's doing things. And so one of the things that I liked about the way they roll things out, and I think they've gotten better at this over time, is the fact that they rolled out certifications, training. They rolled out a bunch of partner programs. They rolled out, Salesforce Ventures investing more money in AI startups. They have, some significant partner announcements around this, with IBM and NVIDIA, Google, et cetera. So I think they've done a nice job of packaging this time, and I guess we'll see how it plays out. But at least there is a path to learn as you go into this and not let the automation kind of get ahead of that.
It is an interesting thing to think about long term too. The role of the agent, like the full AI agent versus the agent co-pilot, and Salesforce can be much more aggressive with the agent than say a NICE or a Five9 or something, whose businesses are under pressure from Wall Street anyways, thinking that AI is going to kill the number of seats and stuff. So there's there's use cases for both, and I think from a customer standpoint, if you implement them wrong, that's going to have a negative effect on your customer experience. And it's I hadn't really thought of that before, Bruce, but I do think it's worth exploring a little deeper, perhaps, in a future one of these, like where you would use each.
Yeah, lots of really great points within that. And sorry, what I was just going to add as well was what that I thought was particularly interesting to Michael's point was recently Salesforce launched a product discovery tool on Service Cloud that helps service teams get the most out of their technologies. If it can expand that perhaps across the Salesforce platform, maybe it can do a better job of of expanding the conversation on where AI is best placed on how they can better leverage it across CX teams. But I am wary of the time now, so I'll quickly move on to our next topic of conversation. I do want to talk about the 1.9 billion acquisition of Own Company that was announced just before the Dreamforce 2024. And Own Company is a prominent cloud data backup management and recovery solutions provider. And now, as Data Cloud seems to be at the heart of the Salesforce platform, as we've just discussed, this seems a significant move to bolster that platform. I don't know, Liz, if you want to quickly share your first thoughts on the acquisition.
If you're going to take the stage and you are going to bring up the fact that another analyst organization released a study talking about data leakage coming out of Microsoft Copilots, and you were going to talk about other organizations not securing data, not having guardrails up on data, not having data availability or observability, you better have a solution in your back pocket, right? Like, you don't get to go up on that stage and hurl that jab without having something there. And I think that's what the Own Company represents for Salesforce. It's actually a really smart pickup because, as we've all been discussing before, if you want to go out and say, I want to be a data company, Arun, to your point, if you're going to go and make that claim, you better make sure you have something other than identity protection, right? You need to make sure that you're not just relying on your, other IT teams, firewalls or security postures, or even some type of access management solution. You really need to have something that's far more comprehensive. I think the interesting thing about Own is that it also is going to provide a bit of a backstop for organizations that are looking to bring more of their data out of their data lake and have that consumed within Data Cloud and have that consumed across the Salesforce ecosystem. Because yes, Own has a great security posture and it has a great backup. I mean, that's primarily where it has been known, is in the data backup space. But now you have data security, you have monitoring on leakage, you have observability, but you do have that backup, right? So yes, there's no copy, but if you need to back something up someplace and not have it weighing on any storage or looking at those costs, you all of a sudden have a very interesting offer to make to the CIO. It's a very different conversation, but I think it's one that if you are going to go down that path of being a data-centric product, you have to start bolstering your security. This is where organizations like, very interestingly, Microsoft, they've got a massive security portfolio. But when it comes to, when you start to look at their Dynamics portfolio, those two portfolios don't necessarily talk to the same audience or talk the same language. The CX buyer doesn't necessarily know what is in the Microsoft security portfolio, right? But we're getting to a day and age when AI agents are going to be directly engaging and communicating with our customers, directly soliciting more information to be brought in through these automated channels. That conversation between data, AI, CX, and security has to start accelerating. And Salesforce is trying to find a way that it can accelerate that conversation in a way that doesn't scare and intimidate their core user and buyer.
See, when I saw this, I didn't like this acquisition. There's a lot of companies out there, Veeam, Commvault, and Own Company, that are good third-party backup and recovery, data management, security companies, and I would rather see Salesforce work with them to make sure that all the instrumentation is there to make sure that they continue to back it up. My concern with Salesforce owning it is, if this is the path we go down, like I know from talking to the CEO of Veeam, Anand Deswaran, former Ring Central guy, Salesforce backup is one of their biggest offerings, as is Microsoft 365, right? Mm-hmm. And so as a backup and recovery team, and now I can implement one backup and recovery and data management scheme across all my cloud apps, right? If this goes the way where the cloud providers start owning it, the SaaS providers are owning it, now I've got the problem of trying to make sure that this features in this one and this features in this one, and what do I do with the gaps, and how do I make sure there's consistency and things like that. And so for things like this, I would rather see, like I said, Salesforce work with those companies rather than trying to own it themselves. It's different approaches, but I think there's so many nuances to this. There's entire companies that are dedicated to it, including the one they bought, that I'm not sure I trust a SaaS vendor to continue the roadmap of getting down to those specific nuances. The other question is, they also do a lot of Microsoft backup in ServiceNow, right? Are they going to continue to do that, right? So if you're the customer of those and you use them for those, you're going to continue to get support. So, long term. So like I said, things like this, I'd rather see partnerships more so than ownership. So that's just my.
I do wonder if small businesses, though, it's funny. It's a really great point, Zeus. I love the point, especially when you're talking high mid-market enterprise. For those organizations, are they going to necessarily look at own and be like, can't wait to move over, like can't wait to give up all my controls? Like I don't see that happening. And to your point, absolutely, that's where a partner approach has to happen when it comes to data, or when it comes to security writ large, right? I think that one of the challenges is when it comes to small and lower end of mid-sized enterprises, they're just, like some of these folks are just really super stoked they don't use password 1234 as their password anymore, right? Like they think that's their security posture. Like I did data backup because I put it all in Dropbox. And you're like, wait, I'm sorry, what could you repeat that for me? Like, what did you just say? So I think that for some, like, I think it's easy. I think for me, I look at, for the small to mid-size organization, it's a smart pickup to have. But I think you're totally right. And I think it's such a great point that, like, for the enterprise, there are a lot more questions. I think that is an excellent point.
Awesome. Some really excellent points there that I hadn't considered. So thanks very much, Zeus and Liz. But now let's maybe switch gears, because I do want to talk a little bit about CCaaS, as we so often do here at CX Today. And Vonage announced that it's part of this Bring Your Own Channel for CCaaS Salesforce pilot program at Dreamforce. Now, Salesforce hasn't officially announced this itself, and details of this pilot program online are sparse. So I don't know if you could all help fill me in on this one. Zeus, maybe you want to start?
Yeah, I don't know how this is going to work in this industry. I mean, I like the theory of it, right? I think the theory of it brings together more partners, allows customers more choice, and I think other companies are trying to do bring your own and things like that as well. I mean, even bring your own carrier today is still really difficult to do. And we've had a decade of maturing that, right, or longer. And so I think, there'll be a time down the road when we're all AI experts and we stop going to AI conferences because we don't need them anymore because it's an embedded part of what we do, that this, the bring your own actually makes some sense. I think we're just too early in the cycle for it to actually scale. I do think there's a handful of leading edge enterprises, large enterprises, things like that really know what they want to do. And this is probably something. I don't think that's the Vonage customer though, right? So, to me, Genesis offering it, or even nicer Five9, the tie into the customer base would not, certainly not for Vonage. So, like I said, I like the spirit of what they're trying to do. I'm just not sure the market's ready for it right now.
Well, look, I think we're going to continue to see folks making a lot of "we love each other" announcements, and a lot of "I want what the customer wants." The customer has to be able to choose, and I think we're going to see then the pendulum swing back to but they need guidance, because particularly for the audience that we're talking about, they don't necessarily want that many choices, or if they do, they want a few vendors who are playing nicely with others to help guide them on how to optimize that mix of vendors and technologies for their own environment.
I thought the funniest thing I heard, it was, I wish I had said it. So I can't lay claim to this. I overheard it while on an escalator at Dreamforce when someone was talking about they're like, wow, Vonage, they got a lot of signage. Like Vonage, they took over the Hyatt. Like people were talking about Vonage, which immediately caught my attention, because I'm like, wait, why are we talking about Vonage? They go like, what, huh? But so the person looked and said, wait, You're like, oh, this is a beta program. Wait, isn't all of CCaaS at Salesforce a beta program? And I was like, oh. And I think that was the bigger, statement and takeaway for me was that kind of this bring your own, bring your own channel kind of feels like, well, we were able to do it with Connect. Like we were able to do it with AWS. Like, okay, like let's see where other partnerships can emerge. Let's see where other what are the things we can plug into this system. And I think that to Rebecca's point, the reason why a lot of people have chosen not to fully race to a cloud-based solution or are not excited when the words I have to replace my contact center technology comes up in conversation is that it's hard. It's really, really hard. Like the decisions aren't easy. Making differentiation across what you need or why you need it or what tools you need to bring in. Wait, what? I've got to provision my own numbers. What the hell do you mean I didn't need a different dialer? Like this world is hard. Yeah. And so for Salesforce, who's really kind of been all about, hey, admins, you can learn this and it's kind of easy, right? When we break it down this way and you get to march on a trailhead and you can have a golden hoodie and everyone's a character, their brand is making complex technology easy. And so now all of a sudden you have contact center and guess what, kids? It's never going to be easy, right? Like it's not, it just isn't that, it's just not that technology. So I think that the more opportunities to kind of have those love fests in the pond make the conversation feel more accessible. Like, oh, I've got different options. Oh, I have another name that I can possibly go talk to. Oh, Vonage. Oh, I think I recognize them, right? So I think a lot of it is about trying to break down that kind of history of this is a really difficult conversation and it's a lot harder than you think, to perhaps have some more of those partnerships and to have some more of those accessible, bring it on your own, it's okay, you don't have to sweat it. I think the more moments that they can have like that, they're going to encourage those partnerships. Is it going to work? Is a completely separate conversation, I think, for a completely separate episode.
Well, and I think too, we have to talk about what kind of partnership we're talking about, right? Because
Bingo.
like the Genesis Salesforce partnership, where they're really accelerating time to value by building this stuff together, making it less complicated for the customer to bring the two pieces together.
Yeah.
You know, what we announced with the industry clouds now that Genesis is going to support. Boy, that's breaking down a lot of the complexity for customers between the contact center and CRM.
I mean, honestly, Liz, based on what you said, I'd say this was successful for Vonage because people were talking about them at Dreamforce, right? And that's not necessarily what they would have expected if they hadn't have made that announcement. So,
well, that's true. I mean,
they did take over the high end. I mean,
the only news we've seen on recently is the Ericsson CEO saying it's the worst acquisition in their history. So I suppose anything positive is good. So
hashtag awkward.
Yeah.
Great. And I think, as you mentioned there, Rebecca, the Genesis Salesforce relationship is especially exciting because it's a co-innovation project. And I don't think Salesforce has the bandwidth to run such projects with a program full of CCaaS vendors, but we'll see. Anyway, I do want to close off by getting some of your thoughts on some of the other highlights from Dreamforce that we haven't already discussed. I don't know, Michael, if you can maybe be the first to share your top highlight.
Sure. Well, there's one thing that I think is a big trend you're going to see across all the sort of AI offerings this year and into the next couple of years, and that's this idea of industry AI. And I was excited to see that they've gone into that with over 100 different industry-specific use cases, and then underneath that, the idea that they built out a use case library with the resources to help those companies get started in that area, because that is a new way to think about this, right? I thought that was an exciting part that maybe didn't get as much attention as it should have.
Absolutely, yeah, 100% agree. I don't know, maybe who's next then? Zeus, don't know if you want to go next.
Sure. I actually liked the continued free AI training that they're doing, right? Everything you read about in this industry is how AI is going to kill jobs. If you look at the economic data from people like the coming out of Davos and places, they'll tell you that there is going to be a lot of job elimination, but there's going to be a lot of new jobs created. And we've seen this play out before. You know, when mainframes went to PCs, all the mainframe jobs went away, but we created more PC jobs on the other end. When voice over IP came, it killed the TDM jobs, but there was more networking jobs in the back end. And so I think this AI will kill jobs and there'll be more AI jobs in the back end. The question is, what are those jobs and do you have the skills to do it? And by and large, most people don't have AI skills. And so I'd like to see more vendors do what Salesforce is doing. In fact, all the big vendors should be doing this. Free training, get your skills up to date. There's a selfish incentive for the vendor as well, because you're teaching them to do things on your platform, which creates some preservation for you. But I think it does help keep the fear and the panic over AI down, because you are helping people gain those new skills. And Salesforce and Microsoft and Amazon, you got lots of money, put some of that into reskilling.
Absolutely. I think that's a really great message as well. I didn't know, Aaron, maybe if you want to go next.
Yep. For me, the most interesting thing was Agentforce, right? And then the way I see it, whenever I talk about Salesforce or read about Salesforce, it always has been data, AI, trust, and CRM. And I guess right now is the time they're walking the talk. And this is exactly that inflection point where I could actually imagine and see the next phase of AI evolving. We are already there, right? Uh, this particular product, this Agentforce platform, this is definitely that next leap, uh, because for the last couple of years or last 1 year or 2 years, all I have seen is a lot of chatbots doing this and that and following that X leads to Y kind of mechanism. But this time, what they've added is that they've added that human element, that they've added that reasoning part to it, which is quite exciting. And they've gone deeper into the enterprise data, workflows, business logics, and to be honest, they're doing a lot of things across the safety part of it as well, not just establishing those safety guardrails and those customizable controls. So pretty exciting to see that. And also, as I earlier said, right, I would be excited to see what other partnerships Salesforce is going to forge, because I don't think they're going to stop.
Absolutely, yeah, great stuff. Nobody's mentioned Slack or Tableau yet, shockingly, but it sounds good. I don't know, Rebecca, maybe if you want to go next.
Sure, I would say two things. My favorite
Slack
presentation
and Tableau.
my favorite presentation from all of Dreamforce was the one by the AI research team, explaining exactly how Atlas looks and the way there's the agent that is then correcting, reviewing, providing that recommendation back. So I thought technically that was a really, really good, accessible explanation of how you can actually get this to work correctly. I think the other thing, and Charlie, you mentioned this a little bit earlier, that I think we're going to see more and more from Salesforce is an extension of the My Service journeys, although it may have different names if we're talking about different clouds. The recognition of Salesforce that it has to max this complexity for customers, that it has to provide admins, particularly at the SMB level, which is where it started with Starter, right? With the ability to talk my way through what I want to do with Salesforce, what my business goals are, and not have to know how I necessarily configure the application to work, and not necessarily have to know what capabilities or features I need to use, but to mask that complexity for me. I think we're getting there. And between customer success scores and My Service journey and Starter and whatever flavor they may decide to market and brand it from a sales and marketing perspective, I think we're going to see a lot more of those sorts of tools. So Salesforce says, yeah, you can focus on the differentiating stuff rather than understanding the nuts and bolts of a very complex application suite today to get the most value.
Absolutely, and I think the Atlas announcement was particularly interesting too, because I guess we haven't mentioned it yet, but it's the next generation of Agentforce, which we've been talking about. So yeah, it's very exciting. I don't know, Liz, if you maybe want to finish this off.
Okay, now I feel intense pressure to mention Slack, which hasn't been mentioned. But I will say, and Rebecca will be my witness to this, I do think that Slack becomes next year's new conversation, right? As we start to look at Dreamforce 2025. And the reason why I say that are two things. Great presentation from the Marketing Cloud GM in the final keynote of Dreamforce for the marketing and the commerce keynote. Steve Hammond said something really interesting, which was AI and technology shouldn't be organized by your org chart, which is really, if we talk about what we've been doing all this time with data, it really has tracked to where we sit in the organization and how our org chart is really orchestrated. The problem with that being that AI doesn't necessarily care what our org chart is, or it shouldn't. It wants to pull all that data from wherever we sit across the enterprise. They don't care who's playing corporate don't touch my button with that data. AI wants it all, right? And when it comes to AI, we're in this really weird position of kind of simultaneously drowning in data while existing in a data drought. And that is a very dangerous place to be in when we start to talk about really utilizing something like Agentforce. And so I think that idea of not looking at data and not looking at technology by the way we currently have our org structure built was a really important point to make. The only way we get out of that is having a different operating system for work and having a different construct for work. I think that's where we start to see conversations around Slack start to evolve. I think we have to remember that just several months ago, Parker Harris was put in kind of at that top spot in Slack to reorganize and re-architect and re-engineer Slack of where that is going to be. I think that Slack becomes a very interesting proposition when we think about it through the lens of Agentforce. And I'll give you this example. The Genesis booth at Dreamforce had M&M dials. You could walk up to it and the M&Ms were all different colors, and you could fill your own M&M bag with what you wanted to know about the most, right? And so it could be AI, it could be customer experience, it could be... So when you looked at where the M&Ms landed on the last day, like AI, like everyone wanted AI, everyone wanted CX. Everyone interestingly wanted workforce management, right? Because they're like, you know what no one wanted was EX. Like the EX bin was still kind of full. People were like, that's a little weird. But I think the reality here is that now that we've got Agentforce and we clearly still have our human force, we need a new place that we can actually have a hybrid workspace for both of these forces to come together. So the question becomes, where does Omni Supervisor, which is still that place where you can go in now for all of Agentforce, right? Not just for contact center, not just for service. And you can go in and see what every agent and every member of Agentforce is doing. You can replay conversations. You can see what the next action was. You can also do that with your human agents and your human teams across the organization. So when does Slack become that new workspace and that new intersection point for Omni Supervisor, Slack, our Agentforce, and our human force? And I think that becomes a really interesting conversation, perhaps for Dreamforce 2025, perhaps for all of us to chew over, because if we really want to have a conversation around future of work, it's got to be about where do we create a space where not just humans get in the loop, or we go and train, or we go and correct, but where do we actually start working together with these automated flows that are going to be learning in and of themselves?
Yeah, it's a great point, actually. It brings me back to the initial vision of Slack, actually, when they bought it. I think it was supposed to be a digital HQ for the business. Yeah. And if you can, from Slack, action through agents, actions within different CRMs without actually entering them, it creates a different proposition.
Or learn from the agent, right? Like, that's wild to be able to think about that. Like, the agent's been running, it just learned something, and it pings you in Slack and is like, hey, you need to come and look at this. You're like, I'm sorry, excuse me, it's, Hal, am you showing me a pod bay door? What? Yeah, it's a little strange, but it could be awesome.
Thank you for indulging me in that conversation about Slack, Liz. But
you're welcome. Can't get your Tableau though.
I'm wary of the time now, but thanks. I think that's a great place to end today's conversation. So thank you to all the expert analysts for joining me, and thank you to everybody for watching. Bye for now.